Okay, so we have Irene Adler and Holmes, right? Was it Grump or Super Grump yesterday who pointed it out? Oh, no, it was Gunny. Gunny pointed it out. Sherlock Holmes and Irene Adler are characters that both show up in the Sherlock Holmes stories by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And even in the in-game versions, Boo Watson is the one that encounters Rita Rossweiss Fallen Rosemary, who plays the role of Irene Adler in the FR story event. So, right now, on this banner, Iris is still very important, but I think a lot of new players get this for free. If you're in that point where you were not a new player, and you still don't have this weapon is desirable to have, but you must consider your crystal count and how risk-averse you are. In one sense, yes, it is good to have this weapon for your Fallen Rosemary, and it enables her to be very good for quantum fights. But you also must weigh what you're saving for in the upcoming patches. 6.3 is looking to be very, very important, and 6.4 being the anniversary patch for Global, as well as the Lunar New Year patch. It's gonna have a lot of good stuff, so you have to keep that in mind. Now, the Stigmata itself, Irene Adler, I still think it was really underrated. At the time of its release, it was a nice alternative to JST because it provided slightly weaker multipliers but longer duration, which meant that you had more flexibility with certain things in gameplay. However, because it's lower multipliers, it comes at a gameplay performance hit. But now Irene Adler is craftable, farmable, grindable through Foundry. It's not efficient because it's a G3 and G3s take a long time, but you could effectively get your Irene top and bottom 2 set without having to spend any crystals, which makes this as a banner less attractive. Why would you spend crystals for something that you can get for not spending crystals? All you have to do is show up and spend other resources that aren't crystals. For pure DPS reasons, you wouldn't need this. Irene Adler, as a set, had a really nice deal on original release where you could buy it with resonators, in addition to getting it from Battle Pass. And not long after its release, it was superseded by Turgenev. I want to say 5 patches later. It was like 5 patches later, superseded by Turgenev after its original release. 4 to 5 patches. I don't remember the exactly. Thereabouts. It was 4.2. 7 patches, actually? 7 patches. If you're on a low-budget account, I probably wouldn't recommend rolling on this banner, honestly. I feel like most players who would rely heavily on Fallen Rosemary probably already have the Scythe. Let's look at some of these off rates. Key of Castigation. No. Outdated. Eye of Collapse. Useful. Darkstar. Not as... No. Just don't worry about it. Darkstar was useful for like 1 patch, which was 4.5, when Holmes was originally released alongside of Evangelion, which now renamed Columbus. Darkstar was used on that 1 patch for Bleed DXY and then never again. Blood Dance. Useful, but not worth going out of your way to roll for. Hecate's Gloom. I believe Blood Dance... Is Blood Dance in Exchange Shop? I feel like Blood Dance is an exchange, isn't it? Ooh. Pardon me. Let me grab some of these. It is. Yes, you've seen it there. Blood Dance is an exchange shop. Yeah, so Darkstar was used for type counter Huodo 30,000 years ago. Yeah, I remember it was used like once or twice, and then everybody who did roll for Darkstar was just like, man, what a waste. Okay, Iris of Dreams and then Alair Serenity. Basically, the only things that are useful from weapons would be the upright weapon, Iris, Hecate's Gloom, which exists in the exchange, and so does Blood Dance. Now, exchange is expensive to get to, so if you do decide that you want to roll on this, Hecate and Blood Dance are the two pieces of equipment that you want to keep an eye out for. Okay, let's look at the off rates. Irene Adler, useful, but not worth the crystals, and situationally good depending on your account state, but the grind time is really slow. Holmes exists as an off rate. This is actually great, because Holmes is seeing a lot of use on Hersher of Sentience these days. Originally when Holmes came out, we were like, this is a really niche set, and then Griseo came out a year later, and we're like, oh yeah, now Holmes is really good. You can use Holmes on HOS with Griseo. You can use Holmes on Griseo. We've seen a little bit of back and forth in MA strats, but in against imaginary type, Holmes on HOS is turning out to be really good. Especially with 6.3 having the new weapon for HOS. You'll be able to run Holmes TB with Dracula M. So Holmes is really nice as an off rate. Vern, if you have Nyx, that's like, okay, well, I got a couple of pieces of Vern now from off rates. That's not bad. I'll hang on to it. Vern would definitely be something that like you pick up and you hang on to, or you just decide you need something from exchange shop right away, and you're like, okay, well, I'll salvage it. Otherwise, I would just hang on to it if you get Vern pieces, but this is not that valuable for a lot of players. Anna Shariak, it's craftable, but if you do get it from off rate, it means you can speed up your farm time if you don't already own the piece. So that's very important to keep in mind. I know a lot of people, especially a lot of newer players, they see something, they're always like, can I keep this? Can I salvage it? And their first instinct is to salvage. I definitely recommend against salvaging right away. Just let it sit in your inventory. You can leave it unlocked. Wait till you have a reason to salvage it. Like there's something important in exchange shop and you're just 1,000 rezos away. Or better yet, you save your duplicates and the gear that you don't need. Save it for a Wishing Well, because Wishing Well requires 2,000 red resonators to use. So sometimes it's better to have the resonators ready for Wishing Wells. Avogadro, still situationally used, especially M piece is the most useful, but TM still used for quite a few strats here and there. Mostly the double S fights. But at least if you can get the M piece, there's a lot more uses for the M piece. So it's the last week before the next patch. I would give this Focus Supply A, Iris, and Irene Adler. I would say this is like a C-, a D tier. D tier banner for filler. Do not recommend unless you specifically understand the risks associated, which is a lot of off rates that might not be that useful, or you could have gotten without having to spend the crystals. If you're a Rita enthusiast and you're trying to get this scythe because you really want to play Fallen Rosemary, I hope your pockets can support your goals. If you get the weapon early, I would just stop pulling, basically. If you've already decided you want to pull, I would just stop as soon as you get the weapon. That's already for people who already planned ahead up for this banner. The chances are, for most players, free to play all the way to high spender, you're probably going to be skipping this banner. It's a filler banner at the end of a patch. Yeah, Leku says, just make a new account and it's free. If you're down to re-roll, you could, yes. Alright, Focus B. We kind of talked about Dark Star and Holmes already because these exist as off rates in the Focus A banner. Holmes has really good art. And is actually useful now because Griseo exists. Dark Star, available on Firepower Supply, but not a lot of people felt it worthwhile rolling for, because usually on a Firepower Supply you want to get your Divine Keys. So let's take a look at the off rates, because I'd say if you're whale enough and you don't already have Holmes, potentially getting a set of Holmes is okay. Maybe. Good art, but no Dorm Chibi. Ah, yes. That's a good point, Lilo. No Dorm Chibi associated. Let's take a look at the off rates. Most people, especially those that are here in the live audience in chat, already know I'm going to recommend against pulling because, again, it's the last week before patch. But maybe if you're whale enough, there might be something attractive enough in the off rates to justify pulling for Holmes. Thunder Kikaku, old meta. Not worth it. Ice Epi, craftable. Dark Star, not worth it. It's also the uprate. Sleeping Beauty, it exists in the option boxes. Well, Swan Lake is in the option boxes from top-up rewards. Sleeping Beauty and Swan Lake are both in Exchange House, the end goal of which would be Sleeper's Dream. Old meta, not worth it. Pledge of Sakura, craftable, not worth it. Skull and Hottie, in Exchange Shop, not worth it anymore. Astral Rend White Dwarf. If you're a player who got Spina for free back in 5.5, but you decided to skip on the gear, this may situationally be okay if you were rolling for Holmes. But that requires you to be whale enough to top up for a banner that's right at the end of patch. This is a bleeding micro edge case scenario where potentially the off rate of Astral Rend White Dwarf could be situationally good. It's not looking good for this banner. Alright, Holmes TMB, the up rate. Yes, this is good. Fuhua Margrave, craftable and old meta. Nice to have, but you don't go out of your weights. You don't go out of your way to roll on off rates. Alright, don't. Old meta at this point. Still good depending on your account state, but old meta at this point. Dante. Dante was available in the current Battle Pass season, so Dante M if you can get it. Dante TM is not bad. Not very often are you going to be using Dante B standalone, right? So, nah. This is if you get any pieces, especially top or mid, I would hang on to it, but other than that, like, this is not going to be useful for most players. Phantom of the Fog. Phantom of the Fog, Irene Adler, TMB. TB, nice if you can manage to off-rate it, but not top meta. It's also old meta. So, situationally good as a placeholder equipment, and that's exists in Focus A. It's craftable. It's craftable. Why spend crystals to get something that you can get from not spending crystals? Leywin Hook, craftable, but maybe some of y'all are like, I don't have the ether fuel. So if you off-rate Leywin Hook, hang on to it. Leywin Hook was also in Battle Pass, wasn't it? Yeah, Leywin Hook was in Battle Pass. So I also give this banner a D. D for don't roll. D for don't roll. That about covers the banner review for this week. See you in 6.2. Next time, we'll take a look at Ichan's gear banner. As a preview, I can already tell you, Ichan's banner is 90%. If you can afford it, go for it. But chances are, if you're free to play, low budget, you may consider skipping Ichan gear in the efforts to save for 6.3 or 6.4 or both. So that's a preview for next week. Yeah, we'll take a look more closely next week. And now I have to go get ready to take a look at Moonshine EX's tier list.